What's up guys, welcome to a ride-along review of the Head Extreme MP. We're gonna do a quick dive on this racket because I don't have a ton to say about it, but I have some points to make, and yeah, I've had my time with that racket, I've formulated my impressions, so it's time to do that video. But I'm also gonna tell you how to save big on rackets and strings and pretty much anything you want when you use my code at Direct Tennis Online. But more on them later, but I will say that my code is so big that I can't even tell you how big it is. Pretty cool stuff. Stick around to hear more about that, and let's get into this review. The Head Extreme MP. A racket I was intrigued by because, well, it's got a very open 16 by 19 string pattern, so that screams spin potential. And if you know me, you know I love me some spin potential. And I've been on this quest for a long time to find an epic spin racket that also gives really good feel. And you know what? There's a design dilemma with that request. But it's not inherent to the fact that you want something with spin potential. It's inherent to the way that racket design is prioritized. So think about this. Rackets that optimize for spin potential are generally stiffer. People associate stiffness with arm pain. So what companies do with stiffer rackets is dampen them more. And that's why it's hard to find a really good spin racket that has really good feel. So spoiler alert, I didn't spend too much time with the, Extreme MP. I'm a little confused on the wording because I just went back in time and bought the 360 Extreme MP, the 360 Plus, which is a couple generations ago. I think 3 generations ago, because I was told the feel is way better. You see, there's that center mold that you can kind of find online now that's pretty cheap, like 80, 90 bucks. I've reviewed a little bit. That Graphene XT MP. And yeah, his layup is different, it's the touch, but the one I speak of is still easy enough to find online. Brand new. Pre-strung with some crappy synthetic gut or multi usually. Anyway, that racket has crazy good feel and really good spin. It has slightly more maybe torsional flex than I want. Like the balls kind of send a little bit more than they do dive down, but they still dive down pretty heavy. Anyway, all the extreme rackets, at least the MPs, which are 100 square inch head sizes, are a little bit more open of a string pattern than those. Long story short, they are pretty muted. I don't think I'm a fan of this Auxetic stuff. There actually isn't really any head racket that I super love right now. I'd probably have to pick the Extreme because it plays how I want to play, but it's missing that element. I want that feel and it's just not really there. So the Graphene 360 Plus definitely seems to offer me more of that. Maybe not quite as much as the Graphene XT, which I guess is a speed model, but yeah. Anyway, I got to know it. Lots of spin, good power. In this video that you're seeing for the playtest footage, I strung it with, I want to say Otoro Spin in the mains and Otoro Snap in the crosses, which is a really exciting string to have on the market now. And I think the color scheme worked really well with the racket, which is obviously really important. And it played to the strengths of the racket really well. So I can't complain. I think I strung it a few pounds lower than I might on a second attempt, but I don't think there's going to be a second attempt. I might have done 48, 45, to which a lot of you were like, that is crazy low that you would do that. Why would you go 3 pounds lower in the crosses? Well, I wouldn't go much higher the next time I strung that racket. I'd probably go up 3 pounds for both. And coming out of winter time, those kinds of string tensions aren't crazy at all. But I do lean on the lower side of string tensions, I think, across the average of the market, just because it gives me more feel. And a lot of the strings I use actually hold their tension really well. But I also put a lot of spin on the ball, so something being a little bit looser can actually work in my favor, or I can overcome some of the launchiness with more spin, no problem. But that all aside, I think that string in that racket is a little bit too low for me. I will say that there are some design details I really love. You see, recently I was critical of ProKennex for kind of shying away from making more bold design decisions. Actually, you should go watch that video. I'm basically pressuring ProKennex to update a racket called the KI-10 to be a lot more like something such as the Head Extremes and so on. Because there's a lot of things to love about those rackets, and there's a lot of things to be really frustrated by when it comes to the ProKennex models. But anyway, I love the parallel drilling on the MP, the Extreme, and they also have these kind of oval-shaped grommets that are really clever because they allow for the right kind of string movement without getting any crooked crosses. So you're maximizing the sweet spot, the power from the racket by doing that, and maintaining the consistency of the behavior across the string bed. So really good stuff from Head for doing that, for sticking to that. I love to see it on the Extremes. They also do it on the Radicals, but they don't do it on every racket. It kind of bums me out that the Speed model rackets have parallel drilling, but big grommets. So you get a lot of crooked crosses like you do on like a Wilson blade or something. The Gravities don't have that problem. I actually don't think the rest of the rackets have that problem, do they? Pretty sure they don't, but Head has so many freaking rackets, sometimes you lose track, right? Anyway, I know that this review is a little bit all over the place. It's not necessarily an organized, these are the specs, this is my measured whatever, and it's, you know, an 8 out of 10 on volleys, 9 out of 10 baseline, it serves well. I'm not really that kind of reviewer, and this video is especially not that kind of video. But I will tell you what rackets it's similar to. It is similar to the Dunlop SX. It's hard to say whether or not it's closer to the 300 or the 300 Tour. Hard to say, but I play with the 300 Tour and I'm more likely to stick with that compared to the 300 because the string pattern is already so open and it's open on a 98. I like that. I like that. That 98 compared to the 100, it takes the edge off of that trampoline effect a little bit. It just feels more reasonable. Whereas the Head Extreme MP is a little bit more open in the crosses than the SX is, the Tour model of the SX. The frustrating thing for me about the Extreme Pro was that the string pattern is suddenly a lot tighter, a lot more closed. So the difference in spin performance between the Pro and the MP model is big, really big. My point there is that if the Pro model could have had like relatively similar open string pattern to the 100, the MP, I'd probably prefer that one to the MP, but it's just such a big difference in spin performance that I can't really accept a trade-off quite like that. So yeah, I think the Dunlop SX is gonna win out. And crazy enough, I think the Dunlop SX gives me more feel. I don't know why. I've tried several more string setups in the Dunlop, and that seems like it's always been the case, but currently I have Otoro in there. And see, in that racket, I have Otoro strung at like 48, 45. Otoro Tour. It's a big difference. It's a much stiffer string than Otoro, by the way. And the feel is actually pretty good. I think if I strung a few pounds higher, it would probably go away. But there's a little sweet spot there where you can actually get pretty good feedback from the racket, despite how dampened it is, if you string it just at the right tension. And when I'm talking about feel, just to be a little more precise, so people understand what I'm talking about, everyone uses that word, kind of throws it around. There's a certain kind of vibration feedback that I'm looking for when I hit a ball. And to me, it's like this extra sensory data that I really want. If I don't have that, I feel like that's less information as far as signaling to me how hard I hit the ball, where I hit the ball on the string bed. Like once you have a racket that sends you some kind of vibration, and not just the shock of hitting the ball immediately. I mean, like there's this period after hitting the ball where there's almost like a ringing in the racket, like almost a buzzing sensation. And maybe that sounds distracting or not, but once I changed my mind about that and I thought about that as like feedback, like the racket communicating to me, I started to just want that more. Like I said, it's more data. It just gives me an extra sensation to connect to when playing tennis. And it helps. It's nice. So it really sucks how many rackets have stripped that away because people associate those vibrations with the vibrations that cause arm pain. And I just don't think that's the case. Those vibrations that you hear, those little tingly vibrations after hitting a racket or hitting a ball, those are so minute, you know? It's not that, it's the shock. It's the initial shock of hitting a tennis ball. And that in itself is already kind of minute. It's generally like technique or weakness that is the bigger problem when it comes to people having tennis elbow. But if you're right on the edge of having tennis elbow and you play with something stiffer, whether or not it's your strings or your racket or whatnot, that might be just enough to push you over to the edge and get tennis elbow. So anyway, that's a different conversation. But yeah, it's essentially what I have to say about the Extreme MP. Pretty great and pretty balanced for everything that it is, but it's too muted for me. I don't really think I have other complaints. It's just that. I think there's a handful of rackets that play so much like the MP that I don't need to like make the MP work because it's just so special in some way. I don't think that it is. The Pure Aero 98, the V-Cores, even the head speed is so similar, you know? The Dunlop SXs, obviously. Wilson Shift. I mean, there's quite a few rackets that are competing for the same exact space that the Extreme is. And if you care about feel as much as I do, I think you'll just kind of search around until you find one that hits those levels of spin and gives you more feel. In fact, the Diadem Axis is absolutely very much like the Extreme MP. but with a lot more feel. It bums me out that that racket doesn't have small grommets or parallel drilling. I feel like that's a missed opportunity from Diadem, but hopefully in a 2.0 version or something, they start implementing those kinds of things. They asked me like what could be better about the racket, and that they'd take my design feedback seriously. So hopefully in a future version, they do that. And they just got to make the grommets small enough or innovative in some way that they're not allowing for the crosses to be crooked. So yeah, if you're looking for something that plays like the Extreme MP but gives you more feel, I might suggest the Dunlop SX 300 Tour, possibly the 300, and or the Axis 100. But there it is. Long story short, it's great in pretty much every way, but it's a little bit too muted for me. I just know that there's other options out there that will give me what I want from the Extreme MP without disconnecting me from the ball like it does. And honestly, maybe something that will be slightly less launchy. And I think the Dunlop SX 300 Tour is that racket. So maybe that's the racket to beat for me right now. I also think it's maybe slightly more aerodynamically optimized than the Extreme, but it's close enough that I wouldn't let that be what splits the hairs for me. Anyway, like I said, if you want to save big on tennis rackets and honestly everything on the entire shop, use my code and get a fat discount on everything, including rackets. They got all the big names there, and the discount is so big that I'm not actually allowed to tell you how big it is, but you can put a racket in the cart, type in Zero Love during the checkout stage, and see how big the discount is for yourself. All right, well, I will leave it at that for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for a review on the SX Tour, because I think it's time I do one. And I'll be talking about my favorite strings. I have a handful of them, but I get asked all the time, what's the best setup? Or what's your favorite string? What string should I hybrid with this? Why do you string crosses lower sometimes? I'll break all that down in a very soon video. Very soon video, whatever. That's what I said, I'm sticking to it. Bad grammar. All right, well, thanks again for watching. I will see you guys next time. Oh, and yeah, one of these days soon, I'll break down what it's like to have two forehands. Yeah, I'm sure somebody noticed that in the playtest footage, right? So used to it, I kind of forget now. All right, see you in the comments, see you in a future video, and check out my Instagram if you want to. It's kind of popping off. Zero Love Tennis on Instagram, just like it is here on YouTube. And say hi. I'm pretty responsive in the DMs and the comments. All right, thanks again. See ya.
Yep, that's good.